Hello there, kia ora. If you're on almost any community Facebook page, chances are you've come across an angry post or two from people talking about rates and the increases that are hitting everyone at the moment, while screeching about the need to get rid of this current lot. It's part of a coordinated attack by alt-right groups with links to Voices for Freedom and New Zealand First to make these hot-button issues of this year's local election, and it's based on hoping that you have no real idea what councils do and how they work. And we know this because we've seen the Telegram messages where they planned this months ago and even seen the metadata on their astroturfing websites before they went live that use form content to be seen by search engines. So I thought today we'd debunk some of their BS and look into what councils actually spend their budgets on, where councils get their money, and why rates have been going up. All of our councils have been facing rising costs, just like every household in the country. But the big difference for councils is that they have to plan and spend over both generations and in the short term. But because of this, simple-minded idiots will try and tell you that councils are spending too much on like-to-haves and not need-to-haves. Like this dude. The reality is there is no council in the country who spends less than 85% of their operations budget on what those morons call need-to-haves, pipes and roading. Some councils spend up to 96% on these. But councils do deal with way more than that as part of their core functions. Here, let me show you, okay? I'm going to take you on a visit to my local shops. Oh, but before we go, rubbish and recycling, that's all council stuff. Right, these are my local shops. That liquor store over there, licensing's done through council. The sushi place, the fish and chip shop, the bakery and roast shop, food safety certification is done through council. The paths all kept flat, that's council. Oh, the collection of illegally dropped rubbish, those bus stops, that bus, all council. Oh, that dog, cute. Registrations through council. This shared space, that playground, this dog water fountain, all in part here because of the council. That street name, and the public toilets, council. Oh, this public bin, this sports field, this playground, the community house, even the daycare, all here made possible by the work that council does. A little further afield and there's libraries, museums, pools, parks, gardens. In almost every part of the country you find it is impossible to go a day without interacting with something your council is in charge of. And especially if you're in an urban area, the chances of what you interact with that aren't pipes and roads, they're going to go up. In fact, swiping on the screen right now is a list of some of the things that your councils do, and a lot of them have wider ramifications than you might realise. Take public events, for instance. Councils issue permits or put on events themselves, which act as economic stimuli. For this concert, for example, 1,000 people showed up. They paid for transport, they paid for food. Some went out for a meal beforehand or afterwards, some brought their own to the event. The council paid for the tech crew, the location, permits, traffic control, marketing, and performers, who all then go off and spend that money on wages, equipment, promotions for their business or skill set to bring in more work. Concerts in Auckland alone last year added $16 million in economic stimulus to the region for 2024. That's more than the government gave food banks in this year's budget. And all of this is done on the smell of an oily rag, within that 15 to 4% of expenditure not spent on the roads and pipes. Because a council's role is to be a steward of the region. It's not just to provide a road or water, it's to look after the region and its people in a more localised way than central government can by itself. And those people decrying getting back to basics either fail to understand that or deliberately obfuscate that. So, how do councils then get their money? Well, rates is clearly the big one. Every property has rates spent on it, and whether you own or rent, you pay rates. They also make some money on things like fees, charging for services like parking, developer contributions from property developers, and consenting processes. In Auckland until last year, transport infrastructure was also paid for with the regional fuel tax, and councils have been asking for tools like collecting GST, bed taxes, congestion charges, and actually having the government pay rates on government property. But that's not likely to change under the current Act, which the current government has already ruled out changing beyond removing those 4 well-being pillars. And in that last bit, well, there was a couple of clues as to part of the reason behind the rates rises the far right want you to get upset by. The same far right who marched up and down the country demanding the end of 3 waters because of the imaginary demon of co-governance. Water infrastructure is a huge cost for most councils, and before the general election, councils had been told to take water costs out of the books and were given lumps of cash in its place, because the new water entities would take over the costs. But when the coalition won, they made councils take them back and reincorporate those costs. And we know already from the Auckland model of local water done well that the cost increases under the scheme wanted by the right will be higher than the public had under Three Waters. And that also leaves out areas like the rest of Northland scrambling for a plan now. And it wasn't just water. Waka Kotahi cancelled funding for a range of safety and roading projects, alternative transport options, and wider availability of public transport when the coalition came in. So projects already underway then dipped into council funding. And while this happened, infrastructure costs skyrocketed. Due to supply chain issues from the height of the pandemic, with the raw materials needed for most infrastructure and the long-term planning that goes into infrastructure projects and maintenance, it means a long period of time to get things done. And now the world has started returning to relative normality, there's a backlog of materials and projects which drives up demand, which drives up costs. It's basic supply and demand on a scale designed for systems and decisions made over generations. And infrastructure costs are what get councils' debt to climb. Another of those big monsters hiding under the bed these local groups try to whip up foment around. They'll use simplistic metaphors like having the car repossessed if debt gets too big. But councils here all borrow off an organisation set up specifically to lend them money, which understands that intergenerational assets should be paid off by the generations that will use them. It's called the Local Government Funding Agency, and they have some of the most rigorous testing and criteria for money lending in the country. They require multiple full council expenditure audits annually. They track asset value, projected growth models, income projections, and much, much more to ensure that the money a council borrows can still be repaid over generations. They do not lend unless it can be planned for, and councils are told in advance before decisions are voted on if they are in a financially viable position to lend before they make a decision. And even when borrowing or servicing debt, council costs do end up going up because they're impacted by the same things that impact your day-to-day costs. And yeah, costs going up do suck, but these costs would have been significantly lower if it weren't for the far right screaming racist dog whistles to scare voters in the first place. In fact, here's Tim Cadogan, former mayor of Central Otago, telling Groundswell that the rates issue that they face in the area is the direct result of Groundswell's actions.
I've certainly got a few questions, Bryce. So just firstly, you were saying water, roads, infrastructure. Why don't you stick to it? This council is sticking to it. Do you know what the rate rise would be if we excluded water rates, water, roads, and infrastructure?
Okay. What
would the rate increase be?
If you're only sticking to those, I have no idea. Sorry.
If we excluded water, roads, and infrastructure, the rate increase will be somewhere around 3%. Now, interestingly, and it's a question
Sorry,
I really
can
want
you clarify that? If you
exclude the Three Waters, the roading, and Mount Kiwi.
If you exclude them,
from the rate rise, we're looking at urban of about 26 in Milton and the likes, which is really weighing heavily on us as a council. And you said, well, why don't you just stick to water, roads, and infrastructure? Water, roads, and infrastructure is 21 of the 24, and our place are 26. We are only spending a fraction of it. But the next question I ask you is, are you aware that in July this year, this council would have had $41 million in the bank, no indebtedness, no future litigious or financial burden from the Three Waters, and the 41 million would have generated over $2 million in interest that we could have funded the likes of what you're saying. We have the system, and yet I think it would be fair to say that there was no institution anywhere in New Zealand that worked to stop that more than Groundswell.
Oh, no, I disagree with that.
Stop Three Waters was definitely your cornerstone campaign. So this is the predicament that council is faced with. So the question I ask no, but it is a point. I do have a question. So consequently, how do you think you can come here and tell us when the predicament we've been placed in? I stood and talked to you at Philip Lang House 4 years ago and pleaded with you that if this happened, that if we lost the Three Waters reforms, we were going to bankrupt the people we love and the communities we serve. Here we are. And yet you come and tell us that it's
happening. Oh, no, I'm not telling you anything. I'm here to put a
debate. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It's not a debate.
So make sure when the local Facebook groups are screeching about rates and candidates and start screaming about rate rises, You find out whether or not they also screamed about co-governance, if they understand the full range of what councils do and the fraction of the budget that actually goes into making a place somewhere that people want to live, not just a soulless husk run by clowns who suck on joy before deciding to give them your vote. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.